Good morning, good afternoon, good late afternoon to some of our listening and hopefully participating audience members. My name is John Carroll. I'm the CEO and founder of the Service Council, a Boston based research analyst firm covering best practices in customer service, customer satisfaction, customer support, and field service, and much more. We are really excited for this segment of the In Service podcast series, a really important discussion. And we're creating this discussion with cadence. So, twice a month, we're going back and forth between technology and industry to get the viewpoints of some of the leading innovators across the field service marketplace, and to bring it forth into a platform discussion here where you can hear their viewpoints live and also plug in with them live. It's an opportunity for you to comment, react, pose questions, and engage. So we hope that you'll engage today. Today's segment is built around the topic of creating an intelligence powerhouse, and it features Shahar Chen, who is the CEO and co-founder of Aquant, an organization that's making a huge impact across the field service marketplace and has been on a rocket ship for the last several years since their founding. Shahar, a very warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining today's In Service podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John. Thank you for inviting me.
Shahar is a recent appointee of our technology advisory board, and in that capacity has been making many contributions to the Service Council. So, Shahar, thank you very much for your contributions. We are going to kick things off. Shahar, if you could provide an introduction to yourself personally, professionally, your background, tell us a little bit about where you're from, what you've done in terms of your career. That would be a good starting point. So thank you very much for leading us through that discussion.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, John. So my name is Shahar. It's a tough Israeli name, but all my colleagues and customers and friends learn to pronounce it in some way. Um, I basically live out of the United Airplane because I split my life between Tel Aviv, New York City, Boston, and recently we added London to the route. Um, but really going back, I've been in the service industry since I was 25 years old, right? And as you can see, I'm a bit older now. But really 20 years later, I'm still learning new things, right? And talking to companies and meeting them, and really the service industry has evolved and keeps on evolving every day. Uh, Personally, on my career, I spent more than a decade in Click Software, doing pretty much every role, starting from technical support all the way to through professional services and innovations and pre-sales, and ended up in sales. Um, Till 2016, where together with my business partner, Asaf Melokna, we founded Aquant to solve a slightly different problem.
Yeah, Shahar, it's been a fun run and a fun pathway for Aquant. We're going to get to that in just a second. Click Software, of course, acquired by Salesforce. I go way back with the leadership team, and I think we might have met during your Click Software days. I worked very closely with Moshe Ben Basat and the other leaders over there. So Hanan Carmeli, who succeeded Moshe, of course, and others. So interesting pathway. Thank you for the introduction. Now, for many in the field service space, Aquant has been all over the place, and there's a strong awareness of your company, but very familiar to the field service space. But for our listening audience, I'd love to allow you the opportunity to introduce Aquant and what it is you're solving. How are you? You've been on a growth path ever since your founding in 2016, and by the way, an impressive growth path. So kudos to you and Asaf on the pathway. But if you could talk a little bit about what Aquant does, what is the magic behind your technology, I think that would be really an interesting starting point for our listening audience.
Sure, absolutely, would love that. Um, so I'll take you a little bit back, right? In the last few decades, we saw several revolutions in the world of service, right? 20 plus years ago, there was the revolution of the CRM. Now every company has a CRM, right? Um, 10, 15 years ago, we saw the beginning of the revolution of field service management. Right now, almost every company has some kind of a field service management solution. And today we see Aquant really leading the third revolution, right? And it's the revolution of service intelligence. And I'll explain a little bit what service intelligence is. Um, if you think about Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City, right? In Mount Sinai, there's an MRI machine, and normally the hospital is scheduling patients 24/7, and everything works well, and the hospital is obviously making tons of money. And one day that MRI machine is going to break, right? And when it breaks, the operator of the machine is going to pick up the phone and he's going to call Siemens, Canon, Toshiba, whoever sold them that piece of equipment. And that company is going to send a technician to fix the issue, right? And the experience that the hospital is going to get is going to be completely different if the guy that's going to show up at the door is somebody that's been working for, let's say, Siemens, for example, for the last 30 years, right? Have seen almost everything, has tons of experience, versus somebody that joined Siemens 2 months ago. Because the junior guy, he comes in, he just finished his training. He doesn't really know how to solve the issue, right? He's going to come in, he's going to look at the MRI machine, he's going to start replacing part number 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 and 8. And after 8 hours, he's going to solve the issue, right? But the hospital is going to be very unhappy because they lost 8 hours of revenue. The patients are going to be very unhappy because they all need to be rescheduled to different appointments. And Siemens, in our case, are going to be unhappy because the machine is normally under warranty or under a service contract. So all these parts that ended up being replaced are basically come out, their cost comes out of Siemens' pocket. If we take the senior guy comes in, he's going to whisper something to the MRI machine and it's going to start working again, right? This is normally how it ends. Kind of like when I come to my parents' house and my father asks me to fix the computer, I stand next to the computer and it starts working again. What we're doing in Aquant, we're making sure that every service ambassador, whether it's a call center agent or a field technician, have access to the knowledge and experience of that senior guy as if that senior guy stand next to him in order to solve these issues. Now, we as a company today, we operate in almost every vertical, right? With customers like Stryker, Hologic, Sysmex, Beckman Coulter, and many more in the med device industry, through printing with Canon, Ricoh, 3D Systems, Stratasys, and all the way to HVAC and even fitness equipment, with companies like Comfort Systems and Technology. And while each one of them has a unique service organization and unique challenges, they're all using the exact same product, which is our service intelligence platform. What is different is obviously the data underneath is unique for every company. And we as a company, we're laser focused on leveraging their data for KPI improvement, right? So it's very, very clear. Are we going to increase phone fixes? Are we here to reduce repeat visits? And obviously for all of them, it's all about the reduction of the cost and time of resolving a customer issue.
Shahar, you just lead us through a really interesting discussion and dialogue of the evolution that we've seen in service. And, you talk about the importance of intelligence and information. And, when we look at, what is the greatest challenge facing service leaders right now, it's capacity management, it's talent availability, it's skill set shortage. And so the importance of upskilling and reskilling, and you think about the complexity of the service network now, it's not just the full-time engineer servicing and supporting assets. It's this extended, disconnected network of channel partners and franchisees and independents, and in some cases, competitors offering multi-vendor services. So how do you up the level and level the playing field in terms of the intelligence to be effective to control that brand experience to drive asset uptime, and to drive utilization of your workforce across that extended network couldn't be more important. We call it a technician agnostic platform. How do we use data and intelligence to empower those technicians that extend across that complex network that was just outlined? So I think it's a really important part of the service equation that you're impacting. And it's no shock that Aquant's been on this meteoric rise because of what you're addressing, which is just pertinent to the service leader's current challenges, if you will. You know, when I look at the 2022 Voice of the Field Service Engineer survey, this is a survey that the Service Council conducts. We have about 2,000 technicians that respond to that survey, so it's a really good voice of research data set. 84% believe that the knowledge required to be effective has increased. 82% believe the work requires greater technology knowledge. And 65% believe that the products being serviced are more complex, right? There's greater complexity. And the second least enjoyable part of the technician's day is the time they spend finding information. Paperwork and admin is still the bane of their existence, but right below that is the time they spent finding information. Can you talk about how the role of a field service engineer has changed and become more difficult? Can you talk a little bit about what you're experiencing with your customers?
Sure, absolutely. So, if you go back 20 years ago, right, you had the luxury of being an expert on a limited amount of products, right, products or model. In today's world, the challenge is that, all these companies, they keep on developing new products
Mm,
and new models and new technologies. And the expectation from a field service engineer is to know everything, right? Not just about the new models, not about what I'm being trained on, but also be there to support the models that have been manufactured 20 years ago.
yeah,
I really need to be an expert on everything. Not only that, technology have changed, right? And as an example, I once did a ride along with a Xerox technician. And during the day, we went in and out and from customers' locations, and he kept on fixing equipment. And the guy has been with Xerox for 27 years, right? And he's an expert. He can solve almost every problem in every printer. And he told me that his biggest challenge today is not mechanical issues, because he's a mechanical engineer. He knows how to solve these issues. His challenges are network issues, because he's not a network expert, right? And somebody that decided that his career is to be a technician fixing printers, now we expect them to be IT experts, right? And solve firewall issues and
yeah.
connectivity issues. And it not only required him to be able to learn more and more models, but really to acquire a completely different capability. And I think one of the biggest challenges, and we see it with every organization, is they end up spending more and more and more time really looking for the answer, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's in a documentation, whether it's in historical tickets, it's really all over the place. And our expectation is not only that they'll know everything and become expert on everything, but we want that to happen tomorrow without really giving them the time to build this expertise that other people, it took them 20, 30 years to get to that point.
Geez, you bring up so many good points. I'm going to pick on one, and that is this notion that we've returned to a generalist methodology with respect to our field service workforces, right? In previous years, we saw this diversion from that strategy where we were looking at stratifying our labor workforce and having specialists. So you'd have senior engineers, more sophisticated up here, and you'd have for the more mundane activities, lower skilled, earlier career technicians that were over here on these product lines that had less sophistication, a subordination of the service experience across the varying product sets in terms of the requirements of skills. Now we're seeing the return of generalists. In fact, we're seeing organizations incentivize their technicians to acquire new certifications on product portfolios out of necessity, right? Because of that capacity issue that everybody's facing. So you bring up a lot of good points. Let's shift to the data prioritization, because one of the questions we asked in our Voice of the Field Service Engineer survey is, if you could ask management for critical data that would make you improve a day in the life of your role, what would it be, and what would make you more effective? Stack ranked from 1 through 6, it was service manuals, it was knowledge-based access, it was service ticket review and management, it was pre-visit review of the service asset history, it was training videos, and then it was the pre-visit review of the customer history. So 360-degree view of the customer, 360-degree view of the asset, 360-degree view of the incident and resolution scenarios. If I bottle that all up into sort of summary. What are you hearing in terms of prioritization? What are some of the inputs and outputs? Do they fall in line with what we're finding from our survey?
Absolutely. And I would add to that, I think it's all of the above, because the
Yeah,
answer doesn't lie in a single one. Um, it's really all over the place in all these different components. And in order to really solve the problem, and you got it right? You know, the talent shortage is now a problem that everybody see. And not only
yeah,
that, everybody's fishing in the same pond, right? For talent. And that pond is getting smaller and smaller. And you know, if you take a technician, right, with 30 years of experience, they have all the knowledge in their mind, right? You can send them to really every problem, to every model, they're going to figure it out, right?
yeah, yeah,
And when it comes to data prioritization, um, I'll share a secret, right? All that experience that these people have in their mind, it's already documented in the organization, right? It is somewhere. The challenge is, you know, and you see it in the answers of your survey, it's not in one system, right? Because
yeah,
companies historically in the service area always used to go with best of breed, right? So you have a CRM from one vendor, and you have a workforce management from a second one, and a parts management from a third one, and you have a knowledge management system that, you know, somebody 10, 15 years ago decided in IT that it makes sense to build it in a house, right? So they don't even have the person to maintain that system anymore. And connecting all these systems, that's only step one, right? So,
yeah,
you know, you need to connect it, you need to collect all the data from all of them. But even after you connect all these systems, right, that hold all that information that you want and basically represents that experience that exists in the expert's mind, what you find out is that 85% of that information and data is really unstructured data, right? It's all living in free text. And, you know, you and I, we might have the exact same problem, but when we call the call center, we described it differently, right? You might say the machine is leaking, and I said, you know, there's water dripping out of the unit. We basically said the same thing. The data represented this the way we said, but um, taking that untapped data is really the cornerstone of what we see as service intelligence, as extracting that experience from the data and turning a gigantic amount of data into valuable knowledge.
creating an intelligence powerhouse, right? That's why we
Exactly.
titled the podcast as such. No, that's a really great point that you make there. The unstructured and to structured. We're going to go there actually, even more so and double down on that. You bring up a really good point in terms of, oh gosh, the complexity of the technology structure within an organization and the multiple systems of record and disparate databases, and how can you get that single pane of glass view into the all the data sources that are within the enterprise. But then how do you get that common language of data once you find all those different sources? So you bring it into a single pane of glass, but then how do you translate that data into a common language so that it becomes easily sortable and structured, to your point, which is obviously critical in making it accessible to the enterprise to create value in their day to day. So I love your viewpoints there, and you're speaking to a very critical factor. We're doing a digital transformation and technology survey currently, and a big part, a big area of focus of service leaders is the integration of technologies into enterprise systems. That's the biggest inhibitor of value for new technology adoption, is integrating it into process workflows and other systems, if you will. Interoperability.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to democratization of service. So I heard this quote at our recent symposium, and it was, "I'm drowning in data but starving for knowledge." And there is vast amounts of data. There's data lakes. We've heard about data lakes. We've heard about, all these the vast areas of data just coming into the enterprise, and then how do you sort and make it more structured, if you will. Can you talk to us a little bit about the critical factors of assimilating and organizing the data? What does an organization do to take a journey down creating an intelligence powerhouse, taking all this unstructured and building it into a structured environment?
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, every company I ever spoke with have tons of data, right? Some of them, go decades backwards, and even though they ended up replacing, their CRM 3 times, that they keep all the data. They have really tons and tons of data. At the same time, every company I ever spoke with also believe they have bad data, and I'm not a big fan of the term bad data, and I'm not a big fan of the term garbage data, right? Because at some point somebody thought it's right to write whatever they wrote in that uh, piece of information. I do agree that in every company we have a portion of the data that is misleading data, right? And for me, misleading data means that it does not represent the best practices, right? It doesn't represent the right way of doing things. And going backwards and trying to clean that misleading data manually will just take forever, right? It's an endless process. And while you clean that data, you have new data that is being generated that also needs cleaning. So that's really not the right way to go. Um, and today we're at a stage where technology can help, right? But technology, and I'll divide it into two segments, right? Artificial intelligence and human intelligence.
Mhm.
Artificial intelligence alone is also not able to solve that problem completely, because first of all, that data not necessarily represents 100% of what's going on. And if you think about artificial intelligence will take what happened in the past and will predict the future based on that. And basically, if you have misleading data in the past, it's going to provide misleading recommendation. The combination of artificial intelligence and human intelligence coming from the experience of the expert really allows you to get to a point that you can get to a starting point of clean data and teaching the technology how to identify between um, the great data and the misleading data, right? So you take that, you take less weight into that misleading data. The combination is of artificial intelligence and human intelligence not only help us identify that misleading data, but it also point a flashlight on the data that is currently not being collected, right? Because although we think we collect everything, once we start leveraging that, you realize, okay, that piece of information, it exists in people's mind, but it was never documented anywhere. And it actually gives you the trigger to say, okay, from now on, I'm going to start collecting that data. And I once attended a session that was led by Joe Lang from Comfort Systems, right? And he was asked a question from the audience, and the question was, how do you know when is the right time to take your data um, and um, and really implement a service intelligence solution? Take that data that is really ready for extracting the expertise and the knowledge out of it. And his answer was, there are two good times to plant a tree. The first one was 20 years ago. The second one is today. So, you know, take the data. The data is ready and it has so many things in it. You better start the journey today, in order to get, a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, to a point that your data is at such high quality that it really represents the best practices.
I love that quote from Joe. We were the beneficiary of speaking on a webinar with Joe just yesterday, and Joe's one of our industry advisory board members, and just a wealth of knowledge. So it was a really enjoyable discussion. He talked about the journey to intelligence, and he's doing a great job over there. So a good case study for our listening audience to benefit from. You can access that at Aquant's website. Please visit their website. The recording and archive is accessible. And Joe is always a willing participant to engage with folks trying to learn. So I would encourage our listening audience to connect with Joe via LinkedIn. He's a great resource. You talk about the journey, and we're hearing a trend. A quick audible on our planned discussion. We're hearing this journey towards proactive service, right? And we see a lot of parallels between customers and employees. In revisiting the trends that we've already talked about around talent and skill set shortage, the importance of intelligence to upskill and reskill, and then the importance to present guided workflows, right? So to be proactive not only with the customer but inside the organization, to look for anomalies, anomaly detection in service delivery, where this instance should take 2 hours but it's really taking 6 hours. Is there a safety related issue? Is there a need for information? Is there some other area of support that's required? What are your viewpoints on that whole guided intelligence and that guided workflow process? Any thoughts from your perspective on how AI can be a strong enabler of that?
Sure, absolutely. So, if I'll take you back, right, a few years ago, we used to go to all the industry events, and everybody were talking about IoT as if this is the holy grail that's gonna save all of us from, the talent shortage and issues that we're being hit by today. Um, Today, there's more realization of, okay, where it can get me, right? How far it can get me, but prediction is still valuable. You can still take data, and as long as you build it in the right format, which means take the data I'm already collecting. Don't ask me to change the format and start all over again, because it's just going to be forever. Take the data I'm already having, try to find these anomalies, try to find these patterns, and definitely AI can provide guidance towards that. Our way of thinking in the company, when we founded the company, 6.5 years ago, it was really about, let's try to understand how the best guys are doing it, right? Because you can have an expert, he can stand next to the machine, he can listen to the noise that the machine is doing, and he can tell you exactly what's going on. And let's try to mimic these guys and try to find correlations in the data that can support us in getting into the journey of mimicking that person. Now, can it work to a level of 100% accuracy? No, it cannot. Right? Same with the expert. The expert will never get to 100% accuracy. Can it get us to a point that everybody in the organization can do predictions at the level of that expert? Yes, we can get very close to that. And by doing that, you're actually able to clone your people, your best guys, and put that capabilities in the hands of pretty much everybody that's joining the company.
Outstanding. Yeah, it's something we're tracking very closely in terms of the importance of supporting that guided workflow and that proactive experience, and it appears to be something that is resonating with many of our members. So obviously AI can be the great equalizer in terms of that predictive, proactive approach, and I think it's becoming a prerequisite, really, to embark on that mission and that effort. So let's go to a different conversation, and this is, you know, the cost of not becoming an intelligence powerhouse, right? If you think about, you know, all these empowerment methodologies with intelligence and information, there's still first of all, there's a great impact that can be made to the organization by enabling it, but there's also some behavioral things that we need to hurdle still, right? Because when we look at the Voice of the Field Service Engineer survey, 81% of technicians and engineers still phone a friend when they get stuck in the field. And we did some cost breakdown analysis where if 20% of your staff, 1 out of 5 technicians or engineers get stuck per day, and that happens 20%, so that's 20% of the time, and the duration of the call is 15 minutes. You've got 2 technicians tied up at an average labor rate of $25 per hour, which, let's face it, we're in inflationary times. That's pretty low for an engineer nowadays. You know, the cost breakdown, it ends up being about $1,000 per technician per annum on for an organization. So if you have 500 technicians, that's a $500,000 cost breakdown because you're not engaging your workforce to utilize the intelligence platforms you're creating, right? They're still relying on that phone a friend methodology.
Yeah.
So, what other impact negative can happen to the enterprise by not embracing an intelligence?
So when I'm looking at this, when I'm looking at the skill gap is expensive, right? Um, the skill gap is expensive, not just in the matter of money, but in other aspects as well. And we look at a quant, right? We're a data company at the end, right? We get data from many customers, and once a year we're doing a benchmark report that allows us to take all these work orders and try to analyze what happens. And obviously, we see an increase in cost per resolution, really year after year. Some of it goes towards the inflation, some of it goes towards the skill gap, because you have less trained employees, people with less experience that needs to solve more issues. The skill gap, in that aspect, what we see is that bottom performance in the organization costs you 67% more than your top performers, right? It's a huge amount of money that is being spent there. The skill gap impacts NPS, because if you send a technician that is not highly skilled, the customer feels that, and you get the feedback on the other side when the job is completed. And the impact is also on the tech himself. Nobody wants to be in a position that I need to call a friend every time. I want to be self-sufficient. I want to be at a level that I can solve the problems myself. So it impacts the confidence, it impacts the morale of the people. But at the end, phoning a friend is a band-aid, right? It's a temporary solution, because that friend is not going to be with the company forever, right? That friend at some point is either going to leave, or he's going to retire, and he's going to take all the knowledge with him, right? And whether we like it or not, the young generation has no intention to stay with the company for 30 years and even get to the point that they can gain that experience, right? And when you are implementing an intelligence platform or intelligence powerhouse, and you extract all that experience and knowledge, what you're basically doing, you're turning that expertise and you're turning that experience into the company's IP, which means that from that point on, it will stay with the company forever, regardless of people coming and going. The experience stays with the company.
Yeah, Shahar, you bring up so many good points there. Excuse the connectivity issues. Both Shahar and I are working remotely today, and our Wi-Fi is a little spotty here. So, if there's a break in our presentation and our live stream, our apologies. We'll try and put some talking point and get this recording out to our listening audience post event. But some really, really interesting topics that you bring up. You're absolutely right that you have to plan ahead for succession planning, that senior engineer is not going to be there forever. And frankly, to your point, the younger demographic is not committed to the role either. We talk about the creation of a technician agnostic platform because there's a likelihood that someone new is going to come into the mix and need to be empowered similarly. And that's just the nature of the beast nowadays. When we look at the Voice of the Field Service Engineer survey, 65 and 67% of Gen Z and Gen Y, that's ages 18 up to 44, which is predominantly the 75% of a workforce nowadays, they do not know or are definitely not going to be an engineer for the duration of their career. That's according to the Voice of the Field Service Engineer survey. And it's not 5 years down the road, within the next 3 years, it's to a tune of about 54%. So it's a large amount of the younger demographic leaving the workplace. So the importance of intelligence continues to become more and more important because of Shahar, you're frozen. Is it me that's?
Now I can hear you back.
I can hear you, Spotty. It looks like we've got you back.
All right.
Each other back here. I think we've regrouped. I can see you moving, so I think we're good. We're back.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Let's move the discussion. Hopefully, you can hear Shahar. I really appreciate all the overview and insight that you provided, and we're so humbled to have you as a board member. Can you talk about your experience as a board member, having recently joined us at the symposium, and some of the things that we're doing together as an organization and partners? Would love your feedback and input in terms of the value that you anticipate from the role, or the value you're receiving from the role.
Sure, absolutely. So, first of all, I'd like to thank you for all the years that you invited Aquant and myself to participate in the symposium, and me personally with the advisory board. Um, I think as for us as a company, the biggest value in working with you and the service consult team is really learning more about our industry. Right? It's talking to service organizations, understand what keeps these executives up at night, right? Learning their challenges and successes. And eventually, this is what makes us in Aquant a better company. I think the advisory board brings something very unique to the world of service. And I've been in this industry for so long, but that this is really this forum for the first time sets the ground for really amazing collaborations that we never built before. Talking to the other leaders of other companies and understanding how they see the future of service, and find ways to work together, you know, really get us to the point that we can bring more value together to our customers than separately. This is, for me, is priceless, and simply based on our monthly meetings, quarterly meetings, we actually get so much value in working with companies that we probably never collaborated before without that forum.
Really appreciate the feedback, and it's been a mutually beneficial relationship. I've always enjoyed our one-to-one conversations, but the organizational collaboration, as a result of all of the work we're doing together, has been enjoyable, an enjoyable experience for our entire organization. So thank you to you and the extended team. It's been a wonderful experience. We share the same sentiment. Let's talk about what's next, right? So you talk about the collaboration and what's next for the service industry. Tell us a little bit, our listening audience, a little bit about what's next for Aquant.
Sure, absolutely. So we talked, a little bit about artificial intelligence, and when Aquant was born back in 2016, the word AI was a banned word in the world of service, right? You couldn't use it. Today, the term AI means so many things that it's practically became a commodity. And the word AI still, for some people, represents some fear. They're bringing something to replace me. And my point about AI is completely different. I don't think AI is there to replace anybody. I think AI is there to help us be better at what we do, help us be better at the work that we're doing. And as a company, I don't see Aquant as an AI company. I see Aquant as a company that was built by service experts. All our executives are service experts. Our employees, they go through our own service expert academy before they even learn anything about our product or our technology. And on our day to day, we breathe service, we dream service, and we happen to leverage AI to set our customers for success. So, for us personally, the next stage is really leveraging all that data, everything our customers are providing us in order to help them be more and more successful and help them solve their challenges beyond just the day-to-day, really strategic challenges, because most of the answers to the questions, they're already there. We just need to find them. Oh, I think you're frozen again, John.
Yes, I am. We need a technician. Can someone dispatch a technician? My apologies. I have no control over the network here, so my sincere apologies. Shahar, can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Yes.
Shahar, can you hear me?
Now I can hear you back. Yeah, now your video also looks fine.
Goodness gracious. It is, I'm not sure if it is going to stay here, so my apologies. I missed the dialogue, but what's next for Aquant is very exciting. I've heard it firsthand, and hopefully our listening audience heard your discussion firsthand. I think it was just me that disconnected. Um, so thank you very much for the overview. Let's close out with something personal and something about yourself that our listening audience doesn't know yet. What's something about yourself or something you're looking forward to here moving forward that our listening audience would love to learn more about?
Sure, absolutely. So, when we spoke before the session, you told me that towards the end you're going to ask me a personal question, and it would be around my passion, right? And I found it the most challenging question because my biggest passion is Aquant, right? And Asaf and I, we founded Aquant 6.5 years ago, and for 6.5 years, I feel like I didn't go to work, right? So I wake up every morning and I enjoy everything I do, and I can only wish everybody to have the exact same feeling. But on the personal side, um, I'm a big fan of traveling. Right? Back in 2006, I quit my job at Click Software for 1 year, and I bought a round the world ticket and I traveled for 12 months. And um, for me, loving to travel, seeing new places, meeting new people, that's by far the thing I love the most. So, in a post-COVID world, I'm really looking forward to all the upcoming trips, for all the new people that I'm gonna meet, and towards all the adventures that are waiting in this upcoming year.
Outstanding, Shahar. Thank you so much for joining. My apologies for my internet connections. That's what you get when you travel. My sincere apologies. We're going to have to record a special members only rerun of this so that our team and our audience can hear it without the choppiness of my internet connection issues. So we'll have to do this again at some point. But hopefully, our listening audience got the value they were hoping from today's session amidst those challenging internet connection issues that I had on my end. But Shahar, it's been a great discussion from my standpoint. Again, the partnership between our four firms has been something that has been very enjoyable. Having you as a board member has been something that's been very rewarding. And I want to thank you for joining today's in-service podcast segment. It's been a great discussion, and I'm sure it's a great resource for our listening audience. So thank you very much. We're going to have to do this again.
Thank you so much, John. It was really great. Thank you.
Take care.